Well, thank you. Great.
Good afternoon, Penn Staters, and thank you for joining us. I'm Paul Clifford, CEO of the Penn State Alumni Association, and I'd like to welcome everybody to today's virtual speaker session. As many of us transition to living, working, and learning remotely, the Alumni Association is ensuring you stay connected to one another and to the university, and to also stay informed. And as a reminder, today's discussion is being recorded. Today, we welcome Dr. Jason Whitney, who will discuss the role of collegiate recovery programs in addressing addictions to alcohol and other substances. Today's discussion is the latest installment of a recurring series of virtual programming from the Penn State Alumni Association. We do this to bring our community together. We'll be speaking with experts, university leaders, and other Penn Staters who will share insight and perspective with you in the coming weeks and months. Additionally, the Alumni Association offers a host of online networking events, career programs, and webinars, and you can view that full list of events at alumni.psu.edu/events. Now I'm happy to welcome Dr. Jason Whitney, who is the program coordinator and co-founder of the Penn State Collegiate Recovery Community, a program that supports students in recovery from addictions. Dr. Whitney is also an assistant teaching professor in the College of Education, a faculty advisor for Penn State CRC's affiliate student organization, Lions for Recovery, and a member of the board of directors for the Penn State CRC's alumni interest group, Lions in Recovery. Dr. Whitney will discuss the role of the Collegiate Recovery Program in addressing addictions to alcohol and other substances. He will show how the Penn State Collegiate Recovery community is making a major difference in the lives of students. And the CRC provides a tight-knit community where students gather daily at the Pasquerilla Spiritual Center and peer support seminars. So, Dr. Whitney, thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you very much, Paul. And would you like me to go ahead and get started with the sharing?
Yeah, go right ahead.
And whatnot. Well, I really want to welcome everybody on board, and thank you so much for coming to this. I'm looking forward to just sharing what I've got for you today. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen right now. It's going to take me a little second to probably get it all exactly right, but I will. Okay, so I'm going to share a portion of my screen, and that portion of my screen is going to be right there. All right, beautiful. So welcome everybody. The title of my presentation today is Addressing Addictions and the Role of Collegiate Recovery Programs. And the first thing I was kind of hoping I might ask you to do is if you could just quickly in the chat just tell me a little bit how you got interested in this topic, who you are, and how you got interested in this topic, or if you whatever connection you might have to this topic. I would if you're willing to share that, I'd be really interested in that. So just take a second, just hit that chat button if you can see it. Can you all see it? Or is that, yeah, I think you can, right, somehow? I hope so. All right. So can you see my screen, by the way? Okay.
Yes.
Yes, great, thank you. All right, so let me go ahead and get started here. All right, so here's a graphic that I think Penn State alums can think very clearly in. And that is the causes of death for certain recent years in American history. So 72,000 Americans died of opioid-related causes in 2017. 88,000 Americans died of alcohol-related issues in 2017. And this year we have a projected death from COVID-19 of 56,000 to 130,000 in America. And those numbers correspond to the size of the Cleveland Browns Stadium, the Rose Bowl, and Beaver Stadium. And the reason I'm going to juxtapose these deaths from opioids and alcohol with deaths from COVID-19 is that we've learned in this COVID-19 era that the great majority of people that are dying after contracting COVID-19, they're dying of other chronic health conditions that are called comorbidities. So I've got an article here that you're looking at about how many COVID-19 hospitalizations had comorbidities, and the number.
Jason?
Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but the screen that you're sharing isn't aligned with what you're talking about. It looks like you're in infrastructure, something from Penn State Communications right now.
Oh, shucks. All right, that's weird. All right, let me let's see. Well, let me stop my sharing and start over. All right.
Okay.
I'm sorry that happened.
That's okay. I apologize for interrupting. Do you see what it looks like there?
Is that what you're saying? Is that an article about comorbidities and?
Yes, I'm seeing the scientist exploring life.
All right, that's great. Yeah, and now somehow the frame is green, which is probably green for good. Okay, great. So we can see that. So were you able to see the previous graphic? No. You were not. Okay, boy, that's okay. Thank you. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and throw the previous graphic with. This was the slide I was talking about. 72,000 died from opioids, 88,000 from alcohol, and 56 to 130,000 died of are projected to die of COVID-19 this year. And so that corresponds to the Cleveland Browns Stadium, the Rose Bowl, and Beaver Stadium. And the reason I'm making those connections is that we're learning that so many people are dying of COVID-19 from comorbidities, mainly diabetes, obesity, and hypertension. And so I want to talk a little bit about what recovery science can help us understand a little bit about Americans' health and these chronic health conditions that are on the national scene. So the first question is, sort of, what do we know about treating chronic health conditions? All right. So the main thing is that chronic health conditions treatment plans always require major lifestyle changes. And I want to take a look at 3 chronic health conditions, the lifestyle changes that are associated with treatment plans for those chronic health conditions, and the very dire consequences that people face if they are not able to get that chronic health condition into remission and enjoy a recovery. So starting with hypertension, otherwise known as high blood pressure. And let's look at it, like all of these chronic health conditions. The treatment plan involves major lifestyle changes. So typically a doctor will give somebody who's been diagnosed with high blood pressure a very stern talking to. And he or she will say something like, change your diet, quit smoking, exercise regularly, take your medication, or your heart will explode. You'll have, over here, I've got consequences. You'll have a stroke, you'll get and suffer permanent brain damage, you'll have a heart attack or another heart attack, you'll experience kidney failure, and over 50% of individuals with hypertension, they die of heart failure. So, and so I want you to keep in mind sort of how much of these chronic health conditions, how much of the person's success in avoiding all of these consequences has to do with their ability to initiate and sustain major lifestyle changes. I'll give you another example, diabetes type 2. The diabetes type 2, the stern talking to is, you must change your diet. You know, you have to lose at least 7% of your body weight and keep it off. You have to reduce your carbs. You have to get more fiber. You have to exercise 30 to 60 minutes a day. And you have to steadily monitor your sugar levels, and you have to take medication if you're prescribed medication, or else you will, in all probability, have a stroke, suffer kidney failure, go blind, become impotent, lose a foot, or worse, and on and on. So let's have a look now at substance use disorders and typical treatment plans. So substance use disorders involve major lifestyle changes. What people are being asked to do when they've been diagnosed with a substance use disorder is stop drinking and drug use, something like go to your AA meetings regularly, meet with your sponsor, work the steps, be of service to others, practice rigorous honesty and accountability, participate in fellowship and community, maintain emotional stability, and avoid high-risk situations. And the or else is, or else you will lose your marriage, lose your children, lose your career, lose your future prospects, lose your reputation, lose your freedom. In the case of so many of the incarcerated individuals are there for alcohol and drug-related charges, or something they did under the influence of alcohol or other drugs. Or else you might overdose and die, or else you might experience liver failure or some other organ failure as a consequence of alcohol and other drug use. So notice that all 3 of those examples involved major lifestyle changes and very dire consequences. So given the gravity of the situation, given that these consequences are so dire, it's sort of amazing how many people are not able to follow their recovery plans. Most people will relapse for all of these chronic health conditions. They all, really more than half of the people for each of these chronic conditions will eventually suffer a relapse, and they will, in all likelihood, suffer the effects of that chronic health condition that they were warned about. So they said, if you don't control your diet, your heart will explode. My own grandfather was warned after he got hypertension that if he didn't change his diet, his heart would explode. And in spite of every effort that my grandmother made to stop him from eating pie and ice cream, he was constantly raiding the refrigerator at night and devouring blueberry pies and entire pints of ice cream. And his heart exploded. So many people do okay for some time, and everyone often thinks that they're great out of the gate. And what happens though is that people might make some changes initially, but most cannot sustain those major lifestyle changes. Changes written twice, interesting. So to take a look, for substance use disorders, about 40 to 60% of individuals with substance use disorders will return to active alcohol and other drug use after a period of treatment. Those with hypertension actually return to hypertension at even higher rates of 50 to 70%. And other chronic health conditions, asthma, for instance, often 50 to 70% of people return to the symptoms of asthma and things like that. For diabetes, it's about 50% will return to the symptoms of diabetes type 2. And so what we see is that more people will relapse and suffer the consequences that they were warned about than will be able to succeed for any chronic health condition that we've named today. And so what we need to look at a little bit is that nobody is really that judgy about high blood pressure or asthma or something like that, but they are very judgy around persons with alcohol use disorders or alcoholism or substance use disorders. And that's because of stigma, and stigma makes it so that to develop a problem with alcohol or other drugs is considered disgraceful, and the person's become infamous for having had it. And this has to do sometimes with they're using a substance that's stigmatized, like crack or heroin or something like that. But most people, when you ask them, sort of, what's your impression of people with substance use disorders? Most people sort of think those with substance use disorders are more to blame for their condition, and that and they often believe things about people who are suffering from addictions, like they're poorly motivated, they're violent, they're manipulative, and these sorts of things. And so a lot of this has to do with their sense that using alcohol and other drugs initially is a choice. One sec. Okay, can you see it? Is it working? Okay, good. Choice. So choice does not determine whether something's a disease, right? So a lot of these other chronic health conditions, like heart disease, diabetes, like hypertension, diabetes, other forms of cancer, involve personal choices like diet, exercise, sun exposure, etc. So a lot of people make choices in their life that are not, and they develop these chronic health conditions and they're not stigmatized. But substance use disorders are stigmatized, and those who initially make the choice to experiment with alcohol and other drugs for various reasons, a certain percentage of them will go on to develop substance use disorders, and their body will change as a result of their alcohol and other drug use. And so chronic health conditions often involve sort of a choice that's initially made to live a certain lifestyle, and eventually what happens is that there are changes that happen in individuals' biopsychosocial systems that make it so that it's almost they find it almost impossible to change the way that they're living. So substance use disorders are progressive, chronic, and oftentimes fatal, as are most chronic health conditions. But substance use disorders, progressive means that they get worse over time. So if you really look at somebody who's been drinking for years and years, and you take a snapshot of different years in their career, most of the time, their their addiction career gets worse over time. If you look, they might have a little bit of a period where it might appear manageable for a week or two, but over any considerable period of time, they get worse and rarely better. Substance use disorders are chronic, meaning that they come back. You can treat it, but very often that treatment leads to a relapse, and oftentimes it needs to be treated multiple times. And even multiple times, sometimes there's no success at actually treating it. Chronic literally means that it happens again and again over time. And it's sometimes fatal. And a lot of people do succumb to substance use disorders. And it is a brain disorder because it involves changes to brain circuits, primarily around rewards, stress, and self-control. So what I want to look at here a little bit is just kind of what do we mean by substance use disorders. And in the DSM-5, which recently was released, there were 11 criteria. And just to put this into perspective, about 20 to 25% of all college students, a quarter of them, meet criteria for a mild substance use disorder. But that's not really what I'm talking about today. What I'm talking about here is the students that I work with at the Collegiate Recovery community typically have 6+ symptoms, and they're severe. So technically, they qualify. The overwhelming profile of, or the profile of students in my program is overwhelmingly that of someone with a severe substance use disorder. Technically, early onset substance use disorders with an especially persistent and chronic course. And so we're dealing with students that they're not doing binge drinking. And their prognosis of easily maturing out is not very high. And lots of students do grow out of their drinking in college, but these are students that have much more difficult circumstances with their substance use disorders. So then looking at what recovery science can tell us, why can't so many people sustain major lifestyle changes, right? And so what I want to talk about here is that we could go on and on about this, but it's complicated because there's biopsychosocial factors. So in the biology, some are genetically predisposed, some have changed their body's physiological functioning. There's a psychological component, besides substance use disorders, making changes in how people think and changing, as I mentioned, the circuits involved in reward, stress, and self-control. Many have multiple traumatic experiences. In fact, if you look at virtually any chronic health condition, the prognosis or the chance that somebody will get a chronic health condition increases greatly if someone has had 3 or more adverse childhood experiences. Trauma is an important underlying factor behind a lot of the biology and the psychology of these addictions. But those are just some examples of the biology and the psychology that make it so that individuals do not succeed at making and sustaining lifestyle changes. And then there's the social factors. And for young people, relapse is almost always occurs in a social situation, and social pressures have play a tremendous role in inviting students to return to using alcohol and other drugs. And so social factors cannot be discounted. I mean, if there's because there are a lot of students that are going out and partying at Penn State, and they make it look really fun. And and oftentimes our students, they describe that initially they feel as though the entire campus is hostile to their purposes. And it seems like everybody's trying to undermine what it is that they're trying to do by not drinking and using drugs and that kind of thing. So one of the reasons that that few people succeed at making major lifestyle changes is that it's not really a big part of our medical establishment. Our entire system is designed around an acute healthcare model. And thank God there's great doctors out there to repair your heart when you do have a heart attack, or to fix, or to when you're hospitalized and you're in the emergency room. And I'm really glad that we have hospitals to treat the acute side of all sorts of different conditions. But with chronic health conditions, it really, our model's not really set up for that. Most treatment for substance use disorders is less than 30 days. Most aftercare programs don't extend past 6 months. If we're really going to help people make and sustain lifestyle changes, it's going to have to extend well past 6 months. And we have a lot of science to prove that. For instance, and here's an important study that shows that, yeah, indeed, people can recover from substance use disorders. If you look at when their alcohol and other drug problem was resolved, and over time, if you look from sort of far out, by 12 years, a lot of people report similar levels of life happiness and satisfaction to people that never had an alcohol or other drug problem. But if you look in close, there's a real problem that starts to happen for a lot of people around 9 months. And so around 9 months, people report the lowest levels of satisfaction, the lowest levels of self-esteem. They're often develop a crisis. And if they are to weather this, what often happens is that their measures of happiness and satisfaction and self-esteem go up tremendously by a year and a half. So there's this expression in Alcoholics Anonymous that some people say, which is don't quit before the miracle happens. This moment of crisis here is an important piece of recovery science, because it really shows that people are not out of the woods even at 9 months. And so, as I mentioned before, most treatment centers are barely monitoring what happens to people after they get out. The really good ones might follow up for about 6 months, but really we can see from this that we need to follow up a lot more than 6 months. We need to follow up well into this known 9-month slump. So a lot of people are exiting recovery around here, and I think a lot of people thought that they were fine here and just didn't do much for them at this point, and thought maybe they could just sustain it here. But what happens, I think, a lot of times is that a lot of people are getting a lot of support for about a half a year, and then everyone thinks, okay, you're fine, let's withdraw those supports, and then the slump happens. I don't think it's an accident that it happens exactly when the acute care model runs out of its support mechanisms for people. So without a chronic health condition, a chronic health model, the acute care system is just not really going to meet the needs of people that need to sustain lifestyle changes. Another thing we see here is that it takes a while for the brain to get restored to healthy functioning. And so we can see that at 1 month, if someone receives, for instance, 30 days of treatment for methamphetamine use disorder, then their brains are not functioning at anything like the level they'll be functioning at 14 months. So it's really important that that to treat people as though they are they're not well at 1 month, because if we can see from brain scans that people aren't well at 1 month, but we can see that they are really quite well at 14 months and on numerous measures, especially these brain scans. So what would it look like to treat substance use disorders as a chronic health condition? And the answer is, one would help individuals initiate and sustain major lifestyle changes by providing ongoing support. Ongoing support being the crucial idea here. And I'm going to talk about an example of this, right? So the best example of a system to treat individuals that treats substance use disorder as a chronic health condition is the Physician's Health Program. Now, if you are a doctor and you lose your license because of for reasons related to alcohol and other drug use, and you can be admitted to this Physician's Health Program. And the Physician's Health Program provides 90 days of high quality treatment, 90 days being really the gold standard. I think there's considerable agreement that 90 days has the best prognosis as far as a length of treatment, but they also receive high quality treatment. They attend peer support groups with other medical doctors in recovery. And that's a really important thing, because in most of the meetings that you go to, it's not full of people that have their that had previously had their medical licenses and whatnot. So they have a community of peers, and doctors are known for really only listening to other doctors in certain cases about certain things. So they have this really important, relevant peer support group. In addition to their peer support group made up of MDs, most all of them are going to AA or some other 12-step group. They're all closely monitored. And here's the crucial thing: 78% of them had no positive urine screens in 5 years. That's the highest success rate for individuals in recovery from substance use disorders ever measured. It's a really, really impressive figure. And a lot of people attribute this to their licensure itself provides an incentive and an added purpose to their recovery. So they're not just getting sober to get sober, or quitting drugs to quit drugs. They're doing this for a purpose, to get their career back and their life back. And they have purposes beyond just stopping alcohol and other drugs. And their purposes are to be restored to their full status. So I'm going to compare that with collegiate recovery programs. Okay, so I'm the program coordinator of the collegiate recovery community at Penn State, and we're just one of 150 programs around the country, of a rapidly growing national movement to support students in recovery from severe substance use disorders. And collegiate recovery communities have a lot in common with those physicians' health programs. Many of the students have attended treatment. The students attend peer support seminars with other Penn State students in recovery. So from Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, we have seminar, and students are required to go to one of those a week, and many go to more than one a week. But they have peer support meetings with other Penn State students in recovery. And so, like the doctors having those peer support groups with other doctors, this is really important. And like the Physicians Health Program, nearly all attend AA or other 12-step groups in addition to their peer support seminars with other Penn State students. We have an 8% mean relapse rate annually, and that's true across 39 programs, according to a study by Alexander Laudet that was done in 2014. An 8% mean relapse is the highest rate ever studied by a long way. I'm not sure how many. We don't have the longitudinal data to compare it directly with the 78% for 5 years at the Physicians Health Program, but I think we're somewhere in the ballpark, same or better than the Physicians Health Programs. And I think in some cases, for similar reasons. Just because Penn State students didn't all lose their medical licenses doesn't mean they don't feel like they have a professional career to lose. Many of them believe that if they don't succeed at recovery, they won't get their Penn State degrees, and they won't be able to establish themselves in their future professions. So there's a lot of reason and purpose behind their recovery. So collegiate recovery communities, our members of the Penn State CRC agree to not use alcohol and other drugs at all, to attend one of our 5 peer support meetings, to work a recovery program outside of the CRC. And we have a small staff that supports 25 students who abide by the membership agreement. And we serve a lot of other students besides that, but 25 of them are doing the entire program at the collegiate recovery community. We also provide recovery housing for up to 16 students at the moment, and that's expandable. And that's a cake from our celebration right there. Here's our center in Pasquerilla. We have a very nice room in Pasquerilla where these seminars happen, and we also, that's a ROAR house, which is our, ROAR is an acronym for Residents of Addiction Recovery. and that's our on-campus dedicated recovery housing. And approximately half the students in our program live in Rohr House. And we've been doing a pretty good job of getting through this COVID-19 era. So we Lions Head pictures at the Collegiate Recovery community because one of the aspects of our public relations policy is that we assume that all members wish to remain anonymous and we don't reveal the identity of other members. So we put Lions Heads on pictures where in order to protect identifiable information. And so this is a picture of one of our recent remote activities. And as you can see, we've got a really strong community network, and it's really helped us get through this period of social distancing. I think because our community roots were so well established, we've been able to enjoy connection, and our students are having a lot of success. We're not a tremendous. I haven't heard yet of any students who have completely fallen off their programs or have returned to alcohol and other drug use. So our group has been very successful going through this, and it's been interesting to see us weather this whole social distancing period of recovery. So that's kind of the end of my presentation. And I kind of want to open it up for questions. And I also want to put my contact information up here. So that's my phone number and my email address if you want to know more about any of this. And so I guess I will. I don't know which one I should. I'll leave it.
Jason,
I'll open it up.
Yeah, we have some questions coming in right now.
Beautiful.
So first one is, do you support students whose parents or siblings are in recovery, or is this just for students who are actually only for students in recovery?
Yeah. Okay. So we're doing a lot these days to try to create a robust recovery ally community, and and so what we would love to have people involved who are like trying to support people in recovery from addictions to alcohol or other drugs, or who themselves were suffering from the active use of somebody else. And one of the major ways they would do that is through our dedicated student organization, Lions for Recovery. And so the Penn State CRC has this student org, and we've recently connected with another student ally organization called Hands for Hope. And that was a group, there's another group of about 25 students whose mission it is to support individuals in recovery. And so yeah, we would welcome having those people in our larger community of allies. Yes.
Great. So if one of us has a family member that's in recovery, what can we do as a support system around that person? What can family and friends do? What advice do you have for those people supporting others in the recovery community?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I think one of the first things is to language matters a lot. And so like when you're looking at the approach to individuals, one of the things is that I think sometimes it's very frustrating, but a lot of the change talk needs to happen a lot of the change talk needs to happen in the individual who's got the substance use disorder. A lot of people want to try to sort of work the person's program for them, or they want to demand that changes get made, and there are strategies to get people to make changes that are well known. For instance, the counselors at Penn State and the health, wellness, and prevention professionals at Penn State, they use motivational interviewing, and essentially what they do is they assess where somebody is as far as their stages of change, and they try to encourage the individual themselves to come up with ideas for changes that they're willing to make, and then once the person's sort of announced for themselves what changes that they're considering doing, they throw as much support into that as they can. So I think the important thing here is that whenever an individual makes some proactive step around addressing their substance use disorder, or around like some healthful thing that you think will help sustain their recovery, it's really important to throw all the support you can behind that and really get behind the changes that they're willing to make. And so I think that's really important, and also just to understand a little bit that this is going to take a lot of time. Most of the students in our program spend 5 to 10 hours a week on their recoveries. When you add up their meetings and their meeting with their sponsor, or if they end up eventually, they'll have sponsees of their own. And it's not uncommon for somebody who's in recovery to go to one meeting a night for the first 90 days, or what's called a 90 and 90. And I think that understanding that this recovery thing, that there's really, it requires a tremendous amount of time and energy and resources. And that unfortunately, that can sometimes leave the family members at home feeling a little bit lonely. And that, and they're saying that, well, what's changed? This person used to be out partying all the time, and now they're out at AA all the time, and that kind of thing. So this understanding that, and patience is really important as well. But there's a lot of other things, but that's at least, I think, a start on answering that question.
Yeah. Jason, it seems like we've made a lot of progress over the past decade in terms of chipping away at the stigma associated with mental health. Where does substance abuse fit in that conversation, and what myths still exist out about substance abuse?
Yeah. Okay. Well, first of all, I mean, one of the things that I think is kind of one of the things I think is really damaging around the myth around substance abuse is that persons with substance use disorder, this idea that, for instance, that people can't recover, they don't recover, or that once you take certain substances that you probably won't recover, like these ideas that no one ever gets better from an addiction to heroin, or nobody ever gets better from after becoming addicted to crystal meth or something like that. Whereas there's a lot of examples of people that have gone on to have really sustained recovery and have really happy and healthy and productive lives. So first of all, there's a belief that people can't recover, just I think is one of the worst aspects of the stigma around this. Also, just this sense of that people who have substance use disorders are sort of generally of low character, or they're scummy or something like that. It's a bad rap, I think, that people get around that. There are a lot of there are enough examples of people that don't have good character who have substance use disorders to sort of so it's easy to characterize people sometimes. But just the stigma and the sort of the socially discrediting messages are really damaging, and it keeps people from wanting to get help, because they themselves, they don't want to ever accept the label of like alcoholic or addict or something like that, because if they do, then they have to accept a socially discrediting role, and so the more people can address stigma and understand that this is a chronic health condition, much like diabetes type 2 or hypertension, the better off we'll be. And I do think in the last 10 years, that understanding has quadrupled. Yeah, is that it? I mean, so that's, I mean, at least that's the beginning. I hope I answered that.
Yeah, no, I think that's
Yeah.
that's what we're looking for. So
Yeah.
you compared it to diabetes, you compared it to people who are struggling with heart disease, other types of diseases that people face. And with some of those other diseases, there are early warning signs, right? What are some of the early warning signs that we might see, either behavioral patterns for kids who are in high school or even earlier than that, they may be going down the path of addiction?
Sure. Well, early warning signs, I mean, before people even begin to actively use alcohol and other drugs, there are sort of known personality types that develop substance use disorders, particularly anxious children, depressed children tend to develop substance use disorders, but also what do you call it? I'm blanking right now. Sensation seekers, that's what I'm thinking of. Yes.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, sensation seeking. The individuals who are, in impulse control, people who have children who have low impulse control often develop substance use disorders. So I think before the actual active alcohol and drug use begins, there are these aspects of personality that predispose people to taking off. But that another early warning sign is if a person is able to metabolize a lot of alcohol early on, and they can develop, and if they start using alcohol and drugs young and begin to develop a tolerance young, that's a very bad sign. The instances of substance use disorder are double or triple in those cases. But I think one of the main things to look at here is that it's almost impossible to sustain like an alcohol or drug using career while remaining honest. And one of the first things that goes with people is that their integrity. They can't really be honest about what they're doing because eventually their alcohol and drug use, their need to use alcohol and other drugs conflicts with their societal functions and their roles. And so what happens to teenagers is that very typically they start to lead a double life. They start lying about where they are and who they're with. They need to come up with sort of excuses for why whole blocks of time, why they weren't in contact and things like that.
Right.
So there's a pattern of lying, not because I think individuals are just they're just dishonest, by nature or something like that, but they are because in a sense they start to see the need to get high, like almost like the sense that almost everyone has of their own survival, and they're looking for relief every day, and they're looking for that chance to use alcohol or other drugs, and it's become an obsession and a compulsion, and so what I would look for there is a pattern of like dishonesty and a double life, where and you'll see little cracks will come through. People can be very good at putting together a very respectable front. And then oftentimes parents will sort of not be willing to see that the other pattern that's developing that doesn't match up with that that public facing kind of persona. Yeah.
So if I'm an incoming freshman to Penn State, how do I become aware of the programs that you offer, and how do I get access to those?
Yeah, sure. So we're on the Student Affairs website, and it's got a lot of information about our program, and it has aspects of sort of like how you would get into Roar House, for instance, if you wanted to live in dedicated recovery housing, and that you do that by contacting me, and if I felt that if I felt that this incoming freshman was stable enough in their recovery to not present a risk to the other residents, then I would offer them a spot in Roar House if a spot was available. And and then as far as the rest of our program is concerned, if if they're incoming freshmen and they're in recovery, I would urge them to get in touch with me early, because I think what happens with a lot of students who, for instance, went to treatment in high school and are put together considerable time in recovery in high school, is that, in my experience, a lot of them will actually return to alcohol and drug use the week before they get to Penn State, and I think that's avoidable, because if they had been in touch with me all throughout their senior year, I could have introduced them to plenty of Penn State students, and they would have had a very different outlook about what it would be like to be in recovery at Penn State. They would see how happy the students in recovery are, and they'd see how successful the students in recovery are. and how lucky they are to go to Penn State. And if they don't sort of learn much about our program or meet other students in our program, I think the sense they get is, well, this is never going to work. And it gets awfully real about a week away. And they start to think, I'll probably fail. And if you follow the logic of I'm going to fail, you might as well just fail now and go off to college as a drinker and a drug user again.
Right.
And at least be consistent. Yeah.
Yeah. Jason, is there any funding available for students who are involved in your program?
We have a small fund of scholarships. About $4,200 at the moment is being rewarded annually to students because of the Evanson Lions in Recovery Scholarship that was founded by Dory Evanson, who I credit as the main founder of the Collegiate Recovery community, who set up that fund when she retired several years ago. She was a professor in the College of Education and an important figure in our founding. And as far as, are you talking about financial resources?
Yes.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. We also do find funding. Sometimes we can. One year we sent 20 students to a conference out in Colorado at tremendous expense, like $9,000 or something like that, for this 3-day conference out in Colorado. And I was able to get a St. Joseph Institute, the local treatment center, to pay for most of that. And so most students went for about $180 each to that conference. And so I'm able sometimes to raise funds to provide student travel. And the students in Lions Recovery enjoy $6,000 of UPAC funding. And those come from the student activities fees. And they can apply for them. And some years they've used up the entire $6,000 on different travel opportunities and recovery activities and things like that.
That's great. So if somebody is interested in supporting your work or supporting the funds that you mentioned, how would they get information on that?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things is, I mean, if you were to sort of email me, about the bottom of my signature line is a link to give money to the Penn State CRC. There is actually information on the website about how to give to the CRC's unrestricted funds. We have a big fundraiser every year for Giving Tuesday. Giving Tuesday seems to be an important fundraiser for us. We also have a fairly strong alumni base of people in recovery, and I mean, one of the things we're sort of looking to do in this next year, it's our 10th year anniversary, and we're hoping that maybe individuals who have networks of people who are interested in this to maybe have a party at their home or something like that, where I'd be happy to bring students and say a few words and have my students say a few words. And then just see if some people wouldn't be interested in supporting our program. I think our program is one of the most compelling and inspirational stories at Penn State. I mean, our students are doing incredibly well. The typical student in our program has a GPA that's 0.2 higher than the typical GPA at University Park. We graduate at 95% of our students graduate. So they do better as far as GPA and graduation requirements than even the students at University Park, which is a pretty impressive group. And the other thing that you see here a lot is they do incredibly well on the job market. Our students get hired by major firms, and sometimes they have like blemishes on their records. Things like they might have criminal records and things like that, and they get hired by places like GE and Intel and Oracle and all kinds of different places. And they're very, very attractive to recruiters because they have this certain. They don't just. I think a lot of times when you see somebody who's in the depths of their substance use disorder, you sort of just imagine that they're going to limp through Penn State at best. Like the best you could hope for is that they'd be a mediocre kind of sidelined student. And what happens for a lot of them is they're not sidelined at all. They
Right.
tend to get as well or better than the typical student at Penn State. So I think the major thing that, like, anytime I think the major selling point for this is that this is not something that you give money to and you'd have to watch it from afar. This is something in which You could come to our events in the fall and the spring. You could come and visit this program any day you wanted to and participate in this in one of our peer support seminars, and you could be part of this, and you could interact with students in this program, and this could become like this. I'm just imagining that there must be a lot of people who care a lot about this and want to be involved in this going forward.
Absolutely. I know that we have alumni chapters all over the country that would be interested in hosting you as a speaker to talk about this program, and maybe interested in hosting your students. So I know we have a couple chapter leaders who are on the Zoom today, and so I wouldn't be surprised if you've received some outreach from those folks. Jason, I want to thank you. That's all the time we have for today. I'd like to thank Dr. Whitney for joining us, and I also want to thank you and all of you who tuned in for today's virtual speaker session. As a reminder, we'll be hosting additional speaker sessions in the coming weeks and months. And this programming is in addition to the wide array of online networking events and career programs that are available throughout the year. You can view our full listing at alumni.psu.edu/events. Thank you again, and we are
Penn State.
Excellent. Thanks, Jason.
Thank you, Paul.
Hey, that was